I was just getting ready to do some management on this one row of comfrey along our fence line, and I thought it might be nice to document what the management and the harvest looks like of an established patch of comfrey. This is an 80-foot long single row. I want to show you some ideas I'm working on in here, why it's here, and what we do with it, so stick around. I believe I made a video showing the beginning of this project, and if I have it, I'll link to it here. The idea is this comfrey is acting as a rhizome barrier between the lawn of our neighbor's property and our garden. I put this in a few years ago, and it's worked incredibly well. This is about an 80-foot long patch. It basically starts right at this corner of the fence and goes all the way down. This is on the east side of our garden. Very quick and easy installation, and we now cut it a few times a year as a source of mulch, as a source of feed for our chickens, compost activation, and all that. And I thought it'd be neat to see how many wheelbarrow loads of material do we get from this first round of harvest. There's so many different reasons that we'd want to grow comfrey. One of them is these beautiful flowers, which are a great nectar source for bumblebees in particular. And so what we don't like to do is just go through wholesale and cut it right to ground. And I talked about this idea in another video, where what I'll do is when the first flush of flowers happen, what we'll often do is go through and step on the stalks to bend them out. So you can see it looks a lot wider than it actually is, because what I did is about a month ago, I stepped over the first round of stalks and they continued to flower. In fact, you can see they just are wrapping up. So this is the last little bit of flower on this set of stalks. So their ecological service to the bees is winding down. But because they were stepped over, new shoots started growing. And so now there's gonna be flowers happening very, very soon on those. And in fact, here, that's already coming into flower. So we can cut off these old stems and there's no loss in nectar flow for the bumblebees. The other value with that is that by stepping over the stems and having them grow out this way, the amount of lawn that they block increases pretty dramatically, to the point where now it's almost about 5 feet, 4 feet or so from the fence line out, that very few weeds are able to grow. A little bit of goldenrod here or there. I'll go through and harvest them first, kind of clean up the weeds, and then get into the actual harvest. That's about how many weeds there are that remain in this. Each year, there are less and less weeds. I'll go through once or twice in the season, just pull whatever little grasses or goldenrod pop through, and each year that population gets weaker and weaker, and the comfrey gets stronger and stronger. So as a rhizome barrier, it's doing incredible work. We have very few weeds that get through to the other side at this point. And so long as we don't dig over there, if it's a no-dig permanent raised bed, the comfrey doesn't creep that way. So it's a really nice system. But enough with that, let me start actually getting into the harvest. It's a little bit more complex because I have kinked over these stems from before, and I want to preserve the growth that's there. So rather than coming through with a scythe or just kind of wholesale harvesting everything here, I'll use a hoary and actually cut off those stalks and get them into the wheelbarrow. So first 14 feet of that fence line, not even cutting all the comfrey, just that which was leaned over, and we've got a full wheelbarrow. Pretty amazing. In this case, I'm going to be bringing 100% of the yield from this into our chicken yard. We just dumped a bunch of mow clippings and some weeds that we pulled in the main walkway this morning. And so what I'll do with this comfrey is load by load, bring it in, and we'll put it back into the compost area. A couple different things may happen. Either the hens will go nuts and eat it directly. That sometimes is the case. I'm not quite sure. Sometimes they really love it. Sometimes they don't care about it very much. They really love the flowers, but the bees love them even more, so we let them have them. But whatever the chickens don't eat right now, they may eat later, and whatever they truly don't eat, this comfrey will melt down and work its way through this whole compost, and it'll feed the earthworms and the pill bugs and all the other creatures. So let me dump some more for these hens. That's just from about 14 feet of cutting. So far it seems like about every 15 feet I get a wheelbarrow load of comfrey. Not too bad. One very reasonable question might be, or comment, well, I don't have chickens, so why would I even want to grow comfrey? Well, so it doesn't have to be just for feeding animals or for doing composting. It's an amazing mulch. So this load I'm going to put around some young currant plants and give them a boost. When comfrey really gets going and is very well established, the amount of weed suppression it does is just crazy. It's up there with like plastic, but without any chemicals or junk. Look at that. This is where I bent the stems over, and so they were laying over this area. You can see how many pill bugs, millipedes. It's just filled with soil life. As soon as I get out of here, the robins will just flip for this. So not only is it killing all the weeds, the plants, the vegetation, the grass, whatever that's there, but it's unlike plastic or tillage. It's providing a huge amount of moisture and minerals and nutrients and all that. So you really see wherever I stepped it over and it sat for a little while, even though we were in a dry period, it completely killed the sod that was there. So we could be actually sowing this out to another crop, but the easiest thing is just to let it grow and then kink it over again and keep that harvest pattern going for the rest of the season. Wow. 7 nice heaping wheelbarrow loads later, and that first harvest is done. It's crazy that it doesn't look like I even cut comfrey in some areas, because it's with the bent over stems, the regrowth really came back and is now getting ready to flower. So there's really no lull whatsoever. Could have cut it all flush to ground, but it would have really knocked the bees back on a nice browse that they could have had for this time. So in a normal season, we can do 3 to 4 cuttings. It's been a dry spring, so that it was a little slow, but I figured now that we got rain, it's time to do it. So we'll be able to do this at least 2 more times this season. And the plants are roughly around 2 feet apart in one row. And so imagine if this was extrapolated out over an acre, what sort of yield you could expect. If it was full sun, good soil, 1 acre, how many wheelbarrow loads per season would you get? I'll crunch the numbers for you. 3 heaping loads went to the chickens, and the rest went to be mulch in various spots as needed. A little bit will get chopped up and be put into a bubbling tank for compost tea. Thanks so much, Comfrey, for the wonderful things you provide.